Learning from Chok L'Israel for Parashat Tetzaveh for Friday, Halacha Psuka. Typically on Friday in Chok L'Israel, the Halacha Psuka is to do with Shabbat. Since we're going to be welcoming the Shabbat this evening. Posek Adam im Anochri ala melecha, וקוצץ דמים, והנוכרי עושה לעצמו, ואף על פי שהוא עושה בשבת מותר. So a person can make an agreement with a goy, with somebody who's not Jewish, to do work to complete a certain job, like to repair a car, or to do any type of activity that would be forbidden on Shabbat, even though the goy is going to do the work on Shabbat, as long as the Jew did not ask him to do the work on Shabbat. For instance, you give your car to a mechanic, and you give it to him on Wednesday or Thursday, and you're going to pick up the car on Monday, let's say. The goy can decide to work any time that he wants, either during the Chol or on Shabbat. Even if he worked on the car on Shabbat, since it was not something that you asked him to do, he decided on his own schedule when to schedule that work, then that would be allowed. וכן הסוחל את הנוכרי לעמים הרבה, מותר אף על פי שהוא עושה בשבת. Also, it's permissible to hire a non-Jew for many days. In other words, you hire him for the month, to do work for you for the month. And you're not hiring him specifically to work on Shabbat. And happens to be that Shabbat is one of the days that is there included. Then he's on duty for the whole month. It's okay, not a problem. Ketzad, Kegon, he explains how, Kegon shesachar et ha'nochri לשנה או לשתיים שיכתוב לו שיהרוג לו. הרי זה כותב והורג בשבת ומותר כאילו קצץ עמו שיכתוב לו ספר או שיהרוג לו בגד שהוא עושה בכל עת שירצה. Just he gives an example. If a person hires a weaver, for instance, somebody who does weaving, or somebody who writes, and he hires him for a year or for two or for a month, and within that time the goy decides to do work also on Shabbat, that is permissible. It is considered as if he had given him a project to complete, and the non-Jew does it on Shabbat. The Jew did not ask him specifically to do the work on Shabbat. However, there is a restriction that the goy should not be paid based on the number of days that he worked. So, for instance, if you tell him, I'm going to pay you for 30 days in the month, and therefore each day you get so much money, then Shabbat is one of the days that would not be allowed, because you hire him basically to work on the day of Shabbat. But if you give it just as a general concept for the year or for the month, not to be accounted day by day, but as a one general amount for a period of time that includes also in it Shabbat, without it being specifically that is per day, then the goy would be allowed to do work even on Shabbat to produce something that the Jew will benefit from, but he didn't ask him to work on Shabbat. He just did it on his own. Bamei dvarim amurim, and these laws that we just said, when do they apply? Betzin'ah, when it's something that is done in private. שאין מכירים הכל שזו המלאכה נעשית בשבת של ישראלי. That it's not obvious, people are not aware, they don't know that the work that is being done on behalf of the Jew, that the Jew is going to be benefiting from it. אבל אם הייתה ידועה גלויה ומפורסמת, but if it's something that is obvious and known, let's say there's a store with a big sign that says Cohen's Laundromat, or has a name of a Jew on it, and it's obvious that that place or that object belongs to a Jew, that would be asur. It would be forbidden even if you didn't ask him to work on Shabbat specifically. Why? Because a person who sees the goy, the non-Jew, working on that project, he doesn't know that the Jew hired him for the project and not specifically paying him by the hour or by the day. And people would think that non-Jew was hired to do specifically work on Shabbat, because he's not going to know that he hired him for the project. They're going to think maybe he hired him by hour, by the day, and paying him for the day of Shabbat specifically to do that work. This idea in the halakha here of mar'it ha'ayin, which is the apparency of something that is wrong, we have to be careful with. Say if a person went into a McDonald's restaurant and he was having a meeting with someone or a non-kosher place, even though he would be eating a kosher sandwich that he brought with him from home, for instance, he's not eating non-kosher food, but people seeing him would suspect it gives the appearance of being something that is wrong, that the person may be eating non-kosher food. So you have to be careful with mar'it ayin, with giving the idea to people to suspect that something wrong is going on. So this Shabbat law that a person can do work on Shabbat, if he's a non-Jew, if he was hired for the project as a general project, not specifically to work on Shabbat, he can do it as long as it's done in private and it's not something that is seen publicly, because people might be misled into thinking that that person was hired specifically to do work on Shabbat. And this was the Halakha Psuka from Parashat Tetzaveh for Friday from Chok L'Israel. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen V'Amen. And I'll say Shabbat Shalom, and also just one added comment here. This Shabbat is Shabbat Zachor. It's a Shabbat that we take out a second Sefer Torah and we read about remembering what Amalek did to us. It's an obligation to come to the synagogue to hear the Sefer Torah being read in this parasha, in the second Sefer Torah, which is why the Shabbat also has the name of Shabbat Zachor. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen V'Amen.